Welcome back to the channel, you guys. This is your girl, Wicked Raider. Kind of taking a look at a few comments that I've received over the past couple of days. And a lot of you guys have really been pushing to decide on which champions will be your focus, especially if you are early game, as I'm kind of just clicking through and collecting a few things as I've been running multi-battles. There are going to be a lot of moments where you pull an epic champion and the pure excitement of seeing the purple come out of the darkness, your heart is racing. And then the more you run a champion, the harder you are pushing to actually get them, geared up and leveled up and mastered. And you begin to wonder, was it worth it? And guys, this is going to happen, unfortunately, more than most of us want to admit. It's also possible that you could pull one of the absolute best champions in the game, and then you find that you don't use them. So it's all about which champions work best for you. It's all about which champions you've actually taken the time to build teams around. And so I want to stop because I received a comment that was asking to go through and do a comparison um, based on the different affinities of champions, and also looking at which champions I would likely build compared to others. It's a big task, but I am really, really thinking about that concept, just going in um, to Bannerlord's faction, just in general. When I look at this particular faction, and as you can see up front, for this account, I've only, received Ronda and Septimus on the legendary scale. And there are a lot of good legendaries in this game. But I'll be honest with you, I don't necessarily get excited when I pull legendary champions. The fact that you don't have access to as many books as necessary is probably my biggest issue with the legendary champion. Are their skills often impressive? Yes, certainly. But the other thing is, am I able at my particular level to get the most out of this champion? And so far, 100% of the time has been no. Currently, I do not have a fully booked legendary champion on any of my accounts, and that includes my pay to play account as well. Am I closer with some champions than others? The answer is yes. For example, if you pulled Ultimate Death Knight, a lot of people have fully booked him. He's a champion that will absolutely warrant putting in the resources and spending the time. But I'm also here to tell you that there are champions like Ronda, really good champion, very solid champion for all of my newbie players. You will hear this from quite a few content creators. I absolutely would take her to 5-star. I am not compelled to take this champion to 6-star status. I have seen video comparisons with her and Kale, for example. I know the damage they're able to deliver is about the same. I do love her passive. The passive ability is one. Her third skill is another one. Fury Tremor that I really, really enjoy, that has that passive effect for turn meter reduction pulled in. It's not her kit by far. Being able to block passive and active skills. She is not hard to book out, so it's not a large number of books either. But honestly, would I 6-star this champion? I'm going to say no. Have I chosen to fully master this champion? The answer is yes. And I think I run her through Minotaur's Labyrinth more often than not because she's really good for the team, and it allows me to run other champions that I one day want to 6-star who are currently either 3 or 4 stars, and I'm able to pull them through and still gain masteries based on her being on the team. Do I use her in arena? Absolutely. Do I use her in faction wars? Absolutely. But when I look at the comparison of damage, the ability for progression, the longevity of this champion, she would not necessarily be the first one that I would run to 6-star. On the other hand, I've also pulled Septimus. Septimus is one of those legendary champions. I haven't heard a lot about this champion. I know that he's been in the game for quite some time. He is extremely, extremely highly rated. Now, because he's an attack-based champion, the first thing I always go through and look at the number of books that are required. Septimus is another one that's not bad. On Behead, for his first attack, he attacks one enemy, grants an extra turn, and resets the cooldown on this champion's Holy Sword skill if the target is killed. On the second skill, he attacks one enemy with ignore shield and block damage buffs. Damage increases according to the enemy max HP, and this is based off of course, his attack ability and or attack level and the enemy's max HP. Giant Killer. Each attack has a 30% chance of increasing the duration of all debuffs on the target by 1 turn. Damage inflicting by each attack increases by 30% if the enemy's current HP is over 50%. It's one of those where Septimus for me is a champion I pull out first and foremost in Faction Wars. It's also a champion because he does have the ally attack for 23%. I currently have champions that have an aura for 30%. So that's going to be another one. He does not have an AoE attack. That's going to be the other one. So there are different reasons and different positions that every champion will play. Well, let's say I come away from my legendary status. Let's say I come down to epics. For epic champions, I will tell a lot of people it depends on which faction you are talking about. There are some factions that I feel currently are extremely strong in their level of champion for their epics. Completely love their epics. And I'll be honest, Bannerlords is not one of them. I've actually pulled more than the ones you see highlighted through, if I put all of my accounts together, and there are champions here. For example, you will earn Lordly Legionary. I would have loved this champion early on. I think he would have been really, really helpful. If you look at the reviews, he's okay. He's pretty average across the board. As a login champion, when you get him, it's nice. I looked at his kit, press the fight, attacks one enemy 2 times, places an extra hit if the target is under a 50% heal reduction debuff. It's very specific. Places 2 extra hits if the target is under a 100% heal reduction debuff. Then you come over to Outflank, a little heavier on the books, attacks one enemy, has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. This isn't unique to him. At this point, you're going to have other champions with decreased speed, and honestly, you're going to have more qualified champions with that ability as well. He can also decrease the target's turn meter by 20% if the decreased speed debuff is placed. Normally with Lordly Legionary, he will be on a team where there is another champion that has the same ability. And so this second portion is what you're going to hit, especially if you have a champion that also has turn meter manipulation included. Legion's Order places a 30% reflect damage buff and a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns. And this can be placed on a 4-turn cooldown. The fact that this skill is on a 4-turn cooldown will immediately drop down its importance. There's no way around it, guys. At this point, if you are not hitting 2 to 3 turns, that skill, by the time it comes around and comes back around, is going to start hitting you as a little bit less important just based on the champions that you have access to. Now, I wouldn't underestimate the reflect damage. Early game, level 30s, 40s, even in the 50s, I really didn't pay very much attention to this one. It's not until, for example, in arena, in certain boss fights, in particular dungeons, that I started noticing that reflect damage can become really important, especially if you're able to build this champion out to be able to deliver quite a hit. The continuous heal is always nice. It's a skill that you will acquire from several different champions, but the combination of these two does put Lordly Legionary in kind of a niche environment. He is an attack-based champion. I mean, his base numbers aren't bad, but he's also one of those champions that by the time you log in and you acquire this champion, you will likely have others that you have a preference for. The other question comes down to, honestly, what type of champion do you prefer? because most of us have a preference. I have pulled Chancellor Yasmin. I believe I pulled her twice, and I have used her for the building of other champions twice. I know that a lot of people will pull epic champions and will always 100% vault them. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm choosing to vault my champions at this very moment. And so, especially when it comes to champions that fall in particular um, levels, auras. Like, for example, Azure is a champion. This is a void epic champion. And when you hit void champions that you will not pull very often, you do not see very often. And this guy has some overall pretty good stats, pretty good reviews. But when you come to the kit, he attacks one enemy 2 times each hit and has a 30% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. This chance increases to 100% if the target has an increased speed buff. So this champion right away, first skill, I want to be careful as to who I am putting him on the team with. Do I have another champion, for example, that's able to throw out that increased speed buff? Skill 2, Aegis level, places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Places a shield buff on this champion equal to 40% of this champion's max HP for 2 turns. This buff cannot be removed, which is kind of nice. You can bring this down to a 4-turn cooldown. Again, ally protection, you're going to have champions that do it. Placing a shield buff is nice to have, especially if you don't have any other champions with its skill at this point. But it's not going to be something that is, this champion is an automatic 6-star level. Last but not least, placing this skill on a 3-turn cooldown, attacks one enemy, places an extra hit. If the target has a stun debuff, the extra hit is always critical. Steals 50% of the target's turn meter, which is nice if they are not under a stun debuff. And this is attack and HP base. The kit is okay. It comes in with a 25% increase of ally HP in all battles, but it's not impressive. And this is for a void champion. And you're going to find that several of your void champions are those. I love her. Ursula the Mourner is one that I would be interested in. But a lot of these are pretty rare to come by. And there are a lot of people that will hop in the comments and they're like, man, I pull the crappiest epic champions. Guys, I did a review where I literally went through each and every faction and broke down rare champions on purpose. And I'll be honest, there are a lot of rare champions that I would much rather build than others. I'm pretty sure, honestly, a few of you guys have probably pulled Spymaster. Spymaster isn't a bad one. I would not fully like run to, 5, 6 star this guy, but his reviews are really good. I've done a short video on him before, but his skill set isn't bad. For a rare champion who is HP built, who normally would be hard to keep alive, I wouldn't even worry about booking this champion out. He can decrease the duration of 2 random debuffs. He does have an AoE on that second skill, has a 50% chance of placing a block buffs debuff for 2 turns. And then he also does the counterattack and also adds a provoke. This guy can put in enough damage, especially if you are level 30, 40s, you're coming to the 50s. Spymaster isn't a bad one to hold for a little bit. Sometimes you don't know exactly where to put him in. There are going to be moments where you need a champion like Spymaster. You need someone who's in the Bannerlords faction, period, because you need someone who's not magic based. You need a champion that's not coming in, doesn't necessarily need that accuracy. They are coming in to just do the work. Risk Arm is, I'm assuming I'm getting his name right. I really like this guy. I will be honest. He's one of those, if you have not, and honestly, I would expect some of his numbers to be a little bit higher. This is one person I wouldn't take in the Hydra. I've definitely used him in Faction Wars. Within the keeps themselves, beyond Sandel's Necropolis, which there are a lot of champions. If they don't run sleep as a skill, I just would skip it for right now. And he would not cross my mind to go to Iron Twins Fortress. But in the dungeons, Within campaign as well, if I'm doing a push, this guy hasn't been very bad at all, especially for a rare champion. He has the ability to do some good damage. Love his skill and his defense base, so not hard to keep alive. He does place a stun, has a 20% chance of doing that one. He places a shield buff on this champion for 2 turns after he does his AoE. You're also going to notice he has the counter attack and then follows that up with the increase in your ally defense by 20%. You will notice as you get to know your champions more and more, their factions will be very indicative of their attack style. Bannerlords, for example, will normally only attack one enemy at a time. They may go in for 2 to 3 hits, but it's usually a one single enemy focus. There are going to be a few champions that do have the skill set of an AoE. They're going to attack all enemies, but it's not common. Now, you would appreciate it based on the other skills that they give you. And this is one, there are uncommons. Yeah. Now, there are some videos for Fireblade that are very, very specific. And I think they're only tied to her, I want to say because of her second skill. Only because sometimes they talk about her poison, her 2.5%, but there are other champions that do 7%. So Oh, I'm trying to go back. I'll have to go back because there's a video that particularly talks about Fireblade, and I was really, really shocked because I had never heard anybody really talk about her overall. But Bannerlords is one of those factions I think is a little bit weaker in the rare department than some others. If you come over, for example, to High Elves or even Sacred Order, as you can see here, the only legendary here that I've even had experience with is Deliana. I know people love Lissandra. I've actually put together all the fragments for Yannica, and I'll be honest, guys, I think I kept Yannica a hot. No, no, no. Not was it Yannica? Is that the one you can pull from? It may be this champion. I'm thinking about the one that you can go to Clan Boss and pull all the fragments for. You can buy the fragments one by one, if that's her. Whoever that champion is the one I'm thinking about. I pulled her before. Arbiter is one I am still going after. I know that being able to complete some quests will allow you to access her. And this is one of those champions that you actually look forward to pulling. She's also one of those legendaries, as you can see. Guys, she is not book heavy. Now, she will have some skills that will only be on a 5-turn cooldown, which is still doable, but she does have that ally speed by 30%, which I would fully appreciate this, especially in Doom Tower. But it's one of those champions that will make you work for them. The rest of these guys, I don't have personal experience with. I have heard so many vets talk about Pixiel. I know when it comes to good old Alexander is another one that a lot of people will talk about. Lysandra is another one that you may pull here and there, but in this particular faction, when I come down to the epic champions, for example, Vergis, I've done a video on Vergis. Vergis is one of those defensive champions that if you pulled him right before Ultimate Death Knight, you probably didn't even get overly excited about Ultimate Death Knight. He gives you kind of the same feels. That guy creates longevity. If you have a team that's doing pretty good, but they need an extra push, Vergis is your boy, hands down. Thinacil is another one. If you pull him, a lot of people will keep him because he has that sleep on his first attack for his first skill, and they use this in Devil's Sand Necropolis. It's a good one. If they have sleep on their skill list, that's where you're going to be pushing them. Tyrell is another one. A lot of creators were really crazy about this guy when they first started the game. He's fallen into that OG kind of category. Tons of reviews that show exactly how widespread his skills can be used. I personally have not pulled him yet. And I know his skill set is one they talk about with the stun, with the decreased attack, the decreased defense. He also sneaks in with that sleep. He's a defense-based champion, so not hard to keep alive, but I just haven't quite had the honor of working with him. I used to get Royal Guard so mixed up with Roscar the Tower, and they look similar. Of course, this guy's a little bit smaller, but epic champions, you're going to hear about a few, and those are probably my biggest ones will be Vergis, Thanasil, and then Tyrell. The other, I have no idea. I have no idea. I have seen people talk about Jingle Hunter, for example. I've seen people in niche areas talk about Marksman, but these are epic champions that I wouldn't lose my mind over, but I can definitely guarantee you will see more videos about Apothecary. Some of you picked Elhain as your starting champion, so you already know. I've seen videos on the Adjudicator is another one that is very good in niche situations. Eris is another one. She's campaign farmable. Magister, guys, is one. I know that him and Apothecary are supposed to be brothers, but I'm going to be honest, don't sleep on him. If you have pulled him and you do not have another support champion, especially early accounts, he's not bad. He's really, really good with support in general. When I pull this guy and I don't have anyone else in this category, I hold on to him. For my very first account, I did not pull an Apothecary until I was almost level 40. And I think that has a lot to do with my approach with using Apothecary overall. And since then, I've only kept him on one account. And I see the potential. I have watched so many videos, listened to the discussions, and went back and forth in comments with so many others who absolutely love the champion. But for me, Magister is one that stole my heart early on. And it's not a mind-blowing moment, but the damage that we're going to talk about can be increased by 25%, but with Majestic Staff, he's going to attack one enemy. If that hit is critical, it's going to place that 25% increase attack buff on a random ally for one turn. Now, this is what I love him for the most. This heal can be increased by 30%, so keep that in mind. So that's a 40% heal based on the target's HP altogether. For Anoint, places a revive on death buff. I cannot tell you guys how many battles I have literally won where Magister was the last champion I had. He was knocked out, auto-revived himself, and boom, automatically hit, and we won. It happens so often. Guys, if you are getting stuck because you're going back and you're trying to get speed on boots, and so you're running, level 7, and you're just in there just running it and you keep dying, this guy can be the extra push you need. He also has a 30% reflect damage. Remember when we were in Bannerlords, I told you guys reflect damage is a big one. And sometimes there are champions you only keep for that skill. Here's another champion that has it as well, and he's a rare. So he will do 30% reflect damage buff on a target ally for 2 turns. And of course, heals all other allies by 10% of the target's HP. And that heal, of course, can be taken up to 40%. Now, this third skill, again, attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a 50% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. If you have some bosses, if you have some enemies that are always getting that one extra heal in, you get them almost to the end point and then they heal. And it's like, not today. He's going to throw that heal reduction out. The skill can be placed on a 4-turn cooldown. The buff debuff chance can be increased by 50%, by 25%. That will actually get you closer to 75%. And then, of course, the amount of damage inflicted can be increased by 15%. And he has an aura in Faction Crypts, increase ally HP by 22%. He's one of those champions that I think a lot of people sleep on, and they shouldn't. So as a rare, I would take my time. And if I pull Magister, I actually would build him out. Is he 6-starable? No. Could you easily take him to 5-star? The answer is yes. Because if you start running him, you're probably going to run that champion enough that he would hit that 4 or 5-star mark without little, like with little hesitation mixed in there. Now, Fencer is one. Guys, you're going to pull Fencer a lot. You're going to pull Fencer a lot. And I see these reviews, which is really tempting me to hold on to this girl and build her out. I've been thinking about it. She is an attack-based champion. She's a little book heavy. You know, my girl is she's majoring in some things. So attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 15% chance of placing a 15% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. The deeper you go, levels 50, 60, is where I can speak of currently. That decreased speed becomes important. There are a lot of teams that are going to outpace you. There are a lot of teams, guys, that you absolutely just cannot go up against and beat them in a speed battle. And this is going to kind of even the playing field just a little bit. Damage can be improved by 15%. The buff debuff chance can also be improved by 15% as well. She does have the stun. The stun is okay. It's not a skill that I go extra berserk for. I appreciate it, but I haven't mastered those champions that throw this out and the timing for it. She also has decreased defense, so she doesn't attack all enemies. With Blade Flourish, has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. On a 3-turn cooldown with an increase of 15% for damage and 25% for the buff debuff chance. You can't beat that. And then, of course, increases ally attack in dungeons by 23%. I've seen videos that say when you get Fencer, you will likely not use her right away, but to keep a copy and build. And for me, there are a couple of champions that fall into that category, but Fencer is one of those that I'm really trying to abide by, because there are going to be some areas where this champion in particular will come in handy. Now, Hyria, no. No. I see there's some areas where my girl is okay in, but I'll be honest, not impressed. Even with the critical hits coming, the 5% poison, the joint attacks as a default skill, increases our crit rate in arena by 16%. Anything that's increasing in arena is not going to cross my mind. With arena, I'm coming in heavy, I'm coming in hard, and that's all that counts for me. Reliquary Tender is an absolute. Absolute. This is a support champion in the very sense of the word. You are not looking at her to throw up huge damage numbers, but what you are looking forward to is this decreased attack. Don't let this throw you off. It's good that she's a rare champion. She's one of the older rare champions. And so it's pretty helpful, because when you see just sheer number of books on this first skill, it can make your head hurt. What is helpful on this 3-turn cooldown is Tender's Watch. Removes all debuffs from all enemies. That first sentence is all you need. Places a 15% continuous heal buff on them for 2 turns. Guys, removing the debuffs is huge. That's huge. That's the support we need. And revives an ally with 30% HP and fills their turn meter by 30% on a 5-turn cooldown. There are champions that do this quicker. But if you think about a combination of Reliquary Tender and Magister, for example, where you have Revive on death, you can have revivers that are rares, that are not hard to book out. She's book heavy on that first skill. Afterwards, only needs 3 books for these other 2 skills. So coming in about 11 books, but you may be lucky enough to pull dupes of her. I haven't, but I have been able to acquire enough books from clan activities, of course, and then tournaments in order to book her out. Definitely one of those that is worth it. Another one for support. Don't sleep on Medicus. Don't do it. Do not do it. Her reviews are not great, but I'll be honest, this is not a 6-star champion, not by far. She will likely ease into the 4-star champion level pretty easily. Depending on your account, you may even get her to 5-star. But it's one of those champions where her kit is very simple. Dual Scalpel, she attacks one enemy 2 times, and then that damage can be increased by 20%. With restraints, this skill can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a 15% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. You can turn that 15% into a 35%. And you can increase the damage inflicted by 10% as well. On the third one, Stimulant Elixir places a 30% increase defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, and also places a 15% increased speed buff on this champion for 2 turns, and this can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown. So when you start thinking about it, when you really start thinking about it, every couple of turns, like you're talking about every 3 turns, if she's coming in and you have another champion on your team that has an AoE for their first skill, she can come in on her second or third skill right behind that with either the buff chances or that AoE attack. And this isn't even a champion necessarily you're looking at for the attack ability, but the decreased speed is going to be helpful. The decreased defense, the increased defense and increase in speed for your team will also prove to be extremely helpful as well. So it depends on how you want to run your champions. And uncommons for high elves, the category is going to be the same. So guys, even if you go through these and you're looking at which epics or which rares are going to be the best to build, I will tell you now, it's all going to come down to your type of account. It's also going to play a huge part in what area of the game are you currently focusing. Are you doing Doom Tower? Are you trying to run particular dungeons? Is your goal to go in and finish out challenges? That will determine how flexible a champion can be. You will have champions that you're only going to use in one area. You don't have to build them right away. You don't have to just, pour resources into them that can be wisely used in other places. But keep in mind, there are a number of champions and a number of factions for that reason. Guys, sometimes you're only going to have a champion for faction wars, and that's okay. You want to pace yourself with book usage, gem usage, silver usage. Those are going to be your limiting factors within this game. There is a ton of research I definitely want to get out there and do within a couple of champions. I'm going to definitely break down the comment that was left for me, just looking at rares from a different angle. And then we'll do an epic rare comparison. If there's an epic champion you're currently using and a rare champion you're currently using, and they have a similar skill set, let me know in the comments which ones you guys prefer. Have you noticed that there are some rare champions that definitely should have been boosted to that epic level? Or are there some epic champions that have outranked your legendaries just by far? Because sometimes that's the other thing. I have some epic champions that I absolutely love, but when I compare them to some of my legendaries, there's not really a comparison. The expectation is that the legendary will be so much better, but my epic is running circles around them. So I can't be the only one. You guys let me know in the comments which champions are really catching your eye at the moment. If you've had any luck during your shard pulls, and have you pulled champions that have encouraged you to kind of push yourself in a different direction? I would love to hear it. If you have not joined a clan, guys, CDC is around the corner. So be sure to hop in, join the clan so that you can definitely qualify for CDC on Tuesday. And as always, happy gaming.